Well, a strong currency and a two-speed economy present some tricky monetary problems for Australia's Reserve Bank board members. Arguably, rate decisions for our nation are much harder than in the US or Europe, where things are only going one way, really. Many in manufacturing are hoping that the RBA's latest board member will be pretty vocal about conditions on the floor. I spoke to Heather Ridout at the end of her time running the Australia Industry Group. Heather Ridout, thank you for joining me.
It's good to be here, Tiki.
Well, you depart the AIG with, I think, a very strong reputation. You're now on the Reserve Bank board, but you also depart the organisation in the middle of a mining boom. There's a great hope from the manufacturing sector that you will be their voice on the Reserve Bank board, will you?
Look, my view, my role on the Reserve Bank board is to bring a real-world perspective to it, but I have to act in the interest of all Australian businesses and the community, and that's the obligation I have. But of course, my background in industry will be very helpful.
You called yourself a growth girl, but not a stupid one, arguing obviously against hikes, and there is this big concern about the Australian dollar. I mean, that is something where the Reserve Bank presumably can make a difference.
Look, I've said well before I was ever approached to go on the bank that this dollar at a high period for a protracted period, no one knows the impact on the Australian economy of that. Once we put that blood through the veins, it really will show up all sorts of things. And so I think it is a very, very important issue, and we have to be conscious of that and the pressure it's going to bring on communities, on regions, on industries and on individual companies. So it's a very big game changer.
My colleague Adrian Thirst can remember you talking about a high Australian dollar at 65 cents, a decade ago.
Well, indeed, and so many of companies in those days found that very hard to take. And we were doing surveys that said at 65 to 75 cents, an awful lot of companies were uncompetitive. Now, the latest one shows that upward of 80, it becomes a real struggle. And basically, you're left with a very small rump over parity that say they have much hope of being competitive. And I think the other big issue, Tiki, from the dollar is it's very hard for multinationals operating here to attract investment to Australia, to renew capital. A lot of it's old, needs to be upgraded. It's going to be a major struggle for a wide range of industries to attract capital.
There seems little chance now of a big business tax cut anytime soon, and yet big business will be required to pay this increase in the superannuation guarantee. How do you think that will impact big business?
Well, look, I think it's outrageous, that the Greens are opposing this. The business community has to attract investment into Australia, and if we have a company tax rate which is out of step with our competitors, particularly in a country the size of Australia, we're going to have real struggles. And the Henry Review position on the corporate tax rate, it wasn't a tax cut, it was a tax reform to make wide sections of the Australian economy, which are going to become less competitive because of the dollar being at a high level for an extended time. It was required, and it's required for big business, it's required for small business, and if people don't understand that, they really need to go back and read that very fine report and really get an understanding of what it was all about.
Well, indeed. I mean, you were almost called an extra member of Labor's cabinet at one point, being on so many different councils and the Henry Tax Review. Very little of the Henry Tax Review and your work has been picked up.
Look, I think it's more than you think. The MRRT is not quite what Henry proposed, but we didn't actually ever propose a final version of the mining tax.
It's very different though, Heather, isn't it?
Well, it is different in a sense, but it had to go through the mincer of consultation, and as a member of that panel, I always expected that to happen.
Now we've had the Queensland election. How do you think COAG is going to function? Because, of course, there's a new business summit that is attached to COAG now.
The fact that we have a COAG arrangement now, which is making very, very glacial progress, and we have, a whole lot of issues foundering, and even the OH&S one was not a perfect score by a country mile. And so I think this is quite worrying, and I hope maybe the fact that we're having such a lot of Conservative governments now, they all get together and start to find some good agendas, because the productivity challenge isn't only businesses, it certainly is businesses, and it's not only the Commonwealth, but so much of it lies in the states, and they really need to lift their game.
The AIG wasn't part of the Work Choices campaign, and that was a deliberate decision. Equally, over the years now, as the pendulum has swung back on IR, you're not necessarily very supportive of the status quo. I think you've said the government is going through the motion in terms of looking at changes. How do you see the IR climate going forward now?
Look, I'm very worried about it. I mean, the backlash to Work Choices was reflected in the Fair Work Act, which gave something like 60 new rights to unions. Certainly it improved some aspects of fairness, but that was really not, I don't think, the major issue. We're now up to over 120 new rights given to unions, and we have a review, and we've got a good panel, and we've had our discussions with them, but I am very concerned about it. There are aspects, for example, of this Act that are worse than in 1993 when we first moved to enterprise bargaining. So if we're going to lift productivity, we're not saying the Fair Work Act is the beginning and end point, it certainly is not, but companies have got to be able to make changes daily, and the enterprise bargaining arrangements and the whole regulation of workers is so fundamental to being able to be flexible enough to make the changes you need to be competitive in a dollar-plus economy.
Now, you've had your first meeting on the Reserve Bank Board. Are you weeny bit excited about life on the RBA?
Look, I'm excited about my life post-AI Group generally. I mean, it's a very big wrench to leave this wonderful organisation, which has been so much part of my life for 33 years, and it's been such a generous organisation in terms of allowing me to have a family while I've been here, and to find I'm leaving it to take up a position. One of the things on the Reserve Bank is incredibly wonderful. You know, it's a real privilege and an honour, and I'll take it very seriously. I'm also been appointed to the board of Sims Metal Management, which is the biggest publicly listed recycler in the world and the 11th most sustainable company in the world.
Oh, well, you're already out there shouting for them.
That's good, and you know, and I hope to stay on Skills Australia and Australian Super. So there's a lot in the pipeline, and I'm looking forward to that.
Heather, good luck with everything. Heather Ridout, thank you very much for joining us, and especially good luck on the highest board in the land.
Thank you very much, Chicky. It's always been a pleasure.